Hi everybody, thanks Isak. Yeah, I'm going to talk to you today about Avi-Tourism and the clues on the slide there. So I presume everyone has a rough idea what Avi-Tourism is about. It's from the Latin word aves, meaning bird, which also gives us the word avian, often connected to flight. And up in the top right-hand corner of the picture there, you can see the birding paparazzi. And just below that, we've got a community bird guiding training that we did in conjunction with BirdLife South Africa. And I just want to mention this because I don't have a slide on it later on. So Avi-Tourism definitely lends itself to the economically advantaged because you've got binoculars, telescopes, recording equipment, apps on your smartphones, that sort of thing. You've also got to have the revenue to travel because Avi-Tourism is essentially travel with the purpose of observing, photographing and watching birds. But we're doing a lot of work trying to get guides in our parks, particularly in the northern parks in Kruger, and we've also done some down here in Garden Route National Park to get our staff bird savvy and trained, but also with the communities living around the park, because they themselves may not be able to be avi-tourists in the purest sense of the word, but they can earn an economic benefit from getting involved in the avi-tourism process. So just some food for thought. It's the world's biggest ecotourism niche market, and there's been numerous studies all around the world. In 2009, our own Department of Trade and Industry did an extensive survey and created that document, which you can get online, on Avi-Tourism in South Africa and all the economic opportunities that come from that. And in America, they reckon the amount that wildlife watchers, primarily bird watchers, spend annually in the US alone is about the same as the entire GDP of Costa Rica. So you can get an idea that it's a huge market. But why? Why do people watch birds? It's nothing new. It's something that since time immemorial we've been obsessed with admiring their flight, and that comes with a degree of envy. We're besotted by their beauty, their color, their shape, their size, and something 2 centuries ago, the biggest industry in South Africa was not the mining industry, it was the ostrich industry, all about making people using the feathers to make expensive fancy hats. There was the guano industry, the guano harvesting, which affected penguins and gannets and all that. Also a huge industry in those days. Matt alluded to it in his presentation. We're captivated by sound and bird song. And not just ones that sing melodiously, but think of things like the call of a fish eagle or the trill of a woodland kingfisher returning to Kruger every spring. Or things like the hardy-daw. What would we do without the call of a hardy-daw? We're also impressed with their architecture and their endeavor. Some of the structures that they build. There's some examples in Mal. That one, the bottom right, is just for you. That's a pair of crowned eagles. Yeah, so we also have them entrenched in societies all around the world as symbols, emblems, and cultural curiosities. America, its emblem is the bald eagle. South Africa, on our coat of arms, we've got the secretary bird, their wingspan. And I think here on the bottom right-hand corner, you've got a green wood hoopoe. It's a nice name in English. In Afrikaans, they call it the kakelaar, which is onomatopoeic. But in isiXhosa, it's Inhlekabafazi, which means the cackle of laughing women. And I think it's really important that we sort of have cultural connections to birds. And if we take it a little bit further, they're symbols of power, royalty, freedom, peace, wisdom, and death, and even love. But why do people come to birding destinations? It can be in SANParks, but it can also be in provincial reserves or on private land. It's primarily because of habitat. Some birds are not restricted to any habitat, they're generalists, but most bird species are habitat specific. And SANParks, of course, is the custodians of habitat. And there's a habitat map of all the different biomes in South Africa. And if you look at the map of the national parks, you can see it's pretty much all the habitat biomes have parks that represent and protect the biomes of South Africa. And some flagship species are now pretty much restricted to only being found in the national parks. We spoke yesterday about the penguins. There's also the sort of bottom left-hand corner, Cape gannets. But some of the larger species are only really found in your large, expansive areas like Kruger National Park, things like the saddlebill stork, the southern ground hornbill, the battleair, the vultures, the pulse fishing owl. Or you get specialists like the black harrier that breeds in Fynbos in our West Coast National Park, or the Agulhas Plains in Agulhas National Park. Or you get the migrants that come from the Siberian Circle, where they breed in our winter time, the Northern Hemisphere summer, and come down and refuel in places like Langebaan Lagoon. But how to maximize birding in the parks and making use of what SANParks offers? A lot of the stuff that SANParks does is accidental. It's stuff that we just do in creating the management and tourism of the park. So things by accident more than design. Things like road infrastructure through various landscapes. Water, all the parks revolve around water, whether it's the mountain catchment areas of Golden Gate, those that are on the coastal plain. We've got 6 coastal parks, ones along the Orange River like Akrabi's and Richtersveld. Even Kalahari, where you've got 2 dry river beds running through the park, and all the artificial water holes that have been put up through its course. So water's important. Birds are attracted to water, and thus, as bird watchers, we're attracted to water too. Then the rest camps and picnic sites that we establish in the park, birds tend to become habituated there. So very often in visiting a national park, if you're in Kruger, if you stay in the camp, you can have a wonderful experience without having to even leave the camp, because the birds there are more used to human activity and easier to observe. Trails and walkways into challenging vegetation. If those trails weren't there, it would be very difficult to be able to get into the type of habitat where you can see those birds. But then we've got more specific interventions, things that are designated Avi-Tourism provisions. We're thinking there of bird hides and viewing and lookout platforms, bird interpretation centers and displays, guided walks and drives, and that's something we could do a lot more of, but nevertheless there are 1 or 2 dedicated birding activities that we offer. And designated birding weekends, and we had Tim Craper talking earlier, and he had that picture of Stephen Whitfield sitting in a spotting plane that's used for counter-poaching. And that was through funds that were raised by birding weekends that the West Rand Honorary Rangers hosts every year. So there's just some images to show that, some of the roads through challenging terrain, and some of the birding hotspots in SANParks. And I've tried to show ones from all over the country, from all our different business regions, the northern region, the arid region, the Cape region, the frontier region in the Eastern Cape, here in Garden Route, and of course from Kruger Park. So we've got some of the mountain roads up, some of the mountain passes, which are really good birding hotspots in Karoo National Park and Kanaka Pass and Tankwa Karoo, and Marakela up to the Lenong vulture colony up at the top there, to the dune fields of the Kalahari, through the camwood thickets of the Sandveld in Kruger National Park, and up in the Pufuri, the Levuvu River floodplain towards Crook's Corner and through the Fever Tree Forest there. There's some images of water. We've got a Langebaan Lagoon in West Coast National Park, top right, a dam in Tankwa Karoo on the left. There's Crook's Corner. There's one of the troughs, artificial water troughs in Kalahari. And then the bottom ones are from here on the Garden Route. You've got Swartvlei and the Nysna Estuary and the Groot River Estuary at Tsitsikamma. And there's some of the walkways into challenging vegetation. A couple from here in the Garden Route, the Garden of Eden, and one of the hides at Wilderness. And then that one top right is Mapungubwe. We've got a treetop boardwalk, which is a fantastic place to go at the dawn to get the dawn chorus. But we're talking about baboon management problem. And one thing, when we built that in 2004, the baboons, being such intelligent animals, soon realized that it was much easier to roost and spend the night on that boardwalk than in the trees. So if you go there early in the morning, you've got to be very careful not to stand in their dung. And if you're in a wheelchair, and you've got to make sure you don't run through it, because if you get poo on your tire, you get it on your hands, and then you've got to hold your binoculars. It's really not a pleasant experience. There's some images from the bird hides, and again, I've tried to use ones from all the different regions. So we've got the vulture hide from Golden Gate, top right, some in Kruger Park. There's one from Akrabi's. That bottom right-hand one is one of the sleepover hides that we've got in Kruger, which is a nice activity through the wetlands at the salt marshes at West Coast National Park. So a real diversity of what can be achieved. There's some of the viewing platforms, which are great for looking at soaring raptors, or the one for the penguin colony at Boulders on the right-hand side, which takes you down so you don't really have any negative impact on the penguins, but you're able to observe them at close quarters. And then interpretation. Interpretation is all about providing meaning to something, and we've got some dedicated birding interpretation centres. The one at the bottom is the Raptor Centre in the Kalahari at Mata Camp, but also there at Boulders, top left, you've got the African penguin displays, vulture displays from Marakele National Park, and a lot can be achieved through that mechanism. Then I spoke about the birding weekends, where we raise substantial funds to plough back into other areas on the SANParks wish list. And the one in Kruger has now been running for 25 years. 1999 was when it was first held, and it only involved 5 parks. Now it's an annual event that involves all the camps throughout the park, and some over several weekends, always at the end of January, start of February, which is a trough period, out of school holidays. So it brings a lot of collateral revenue from the park, because people come in and they go on these events and they get to go to special places in the park which are maybe off limits or difficult to get to during normal activities, and also in the company of experienced bird guides. And you can see birds, they've been run in all the parks pretty much throughout the entire country. But last year, in September, BirdLife South Africa initiated a project. They got funding through the Western Cape government to do this as a job creation exercise. And it was all about developing the Garden Route in Klein Karoo as an Avi-Tourism destination. And that's the area that they were active in, and it involved 7 municipalities and a number of, if we look at the sort of partners, Cape Nature, ourselves, South African National Parks, all the bird clubs active in the area, and a lot of private individuals. And there's a number of members in the audience who were here in that problem, Mark and Jono and Matt, and I think Henry's at the back, and probably some of my SANParks colleagues, Shamal, and I know was involved. So it was a great exercise in collaboration and working together, which is something, a common theme that we've been hearing in all our presentations over the course of the last couple of days. In terms of the project rollout, some of the things they did, they started off with information sessions in all the 7 municipalities. They identified new birding sites and tried to spread and create information, which they used various mechanisms to make publicly accessible. They had an upskilling exercise, tour guiding upskilling. They were active in SANParks. You can see the Nature's Valley staff all having gone through their bird training at the bottom right there. Then they had a number of birding tourism open days, and they hosted a media tour. They brought a lot of media people down. There's me talking to them in the trail at Harkerville, the Garden of Eden. And we got quite a lot of mileage out of that. And they sort of wrapped it up and had recommendations for phase 2, because it's something that has to be ongoing. You can't just go through the process and then stop. But yeah, some of the media rollout that we got in publications like the Sunday Times Lifestyle Magazine, the Platteland, Africa Birds and Birding, that sort of thing. So I've spoken for quite a lot. I've tried to be as succinct as possible, but I'm going to end, and I'm probably killing there's one more presenter, hey. But everyone's really looking forward to lunch. And if you don't like birds, we love to eat them and their eggs. Thank you.